are talking Mermaid Down. No, this movie does not star Gerard Butler trying to save the president. I personally like to refer to this movie as one to Under the Mermaid's Nest, maybe it's more likely. This one is directed by Jeffrey Grellman and stars Alexandra Bokova as the mermaid. So, this movie is a little bit of a bizarre story, so let me give you a brief rundown. A mermaid is captured by some fishermen and through circumstances ends up in the care of this doctor who owns a kind of mental asylum for women. And she ends up kind of going into this asylum and she grows legs rather than a kind of a tail. Obviously, she kind of claims she's a mermaid. No one kind of believes her. She can't still talk. She has to kind of do sign language and everything like this. Everyone just thinks she's nuts, obviously, apart from the doctor who kind of knows the truth. And this doctor's a little bit of a shady character. We also have a B plot with a ghost. Well, and that's all I'll say on the plot here. Now, you may be thinking that plot seems a little bit kind of scattershot. Put a pin in that, we'll come back to that one. But let's talk about what works first of all with Mermaid Down. So, number one, I've got to say, on a technical level, this movie is made extremely proficiently. The cinematography here is very, very impressive. There are some beautiful looking shots here, and I feel this movie is shot incredibly well. The lighting is excellent, the kind of the camera placing, the mixture of kind of like, different kind of camera angles and kind of like wide shots mixed in there, things like that. All very good. All on a technical side here, I feel this movie is very, very proficiently made. The sound design is excellent. I thought the kind of like the sound effects that they've used, the kind of the mermaid scream, things like that, really do kind of sound quite haunting. The soundtrack is effective. On a technical level, I feel this movie is very, very well made. I mean, it's relatively low budget. So I think it's about $85,000. So it's lower budget, but not mega low. And it looks like it's more expensive than it is, I would say, because of that. So it looks very good. Number two, I feel some of the acting here is very good. In particular, the lady who plays the mermaid herself. Now, she doesn't speak at all in the film. It's all kind of just done through facial expressions and body language, but you do get the idea about what the emotions that she's kind of going through and how she's able to kind of communicate using purely kind of like, say, facial expressions, body language and sign language. She does a good job here of really kind of portraying a almost like an animal, like a wide-eyed kind of like a dog, if you can imagine, who's kind of shoved into this kind of cage from being free in the wild and stuff like that. And because she's not really used to kind of humans, she's obviously very aggressive towards them and stuff like this. So I thought she did an excellent job here. And there are some other actors here who I feel do a pretty decent job as well. The movie is somewhat of a kind of a... It tries to have some of a kind of art house feel to it, I suppose. So it does have a somewhat kind of unique flavour to it. And I feel that although the special effects and the kind of the special makeup and things are limited, I feel it's effective for what it tries to do. I think the makeup, the practical makeup in regards to the prosthetics and the tail and stuff, is good. It looks good for a kind of a lower budget film. But let's talk about what does not work for this movie. And go back to that pin. The story here is all over the place. I'm going to say something that I've seen a fair few reviews before. And I see this a lot in low budget movies. Because the production is relatively small, the people involved in the film kind of know intimately how the story is supposed to go. And, the director's wife or something knows it, and he's probably going, oh, what do you think, darling? How's the film looking? Oh, it's looking great. But the problem is when you take this kind of film out and you put it onto an audience that has no kind of connection to the film whatsoever, it does not translate. The story does not come across as well as these people who have written the story think it's supposed to. And I've said many times, I used to work in a marketing style job, and I used to have to test things to make sure people would understand the message. And I feel there's a common practice in low budget films, or some of them at least, where story elements get lost because it's too inside baseball. They kind of the stories. People who make the film know what's supposed to happen, but it's not translated well to film. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to kind of give you some. I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I am going to talk about the very first scenes in the film, and just to give you an idea to demonstrate what I mean here. So we have these fishermen. It starts with these fishermen who are all seasoned fishermen by all accounts, and they say on film that, oh, we don't believe, you know, they've never seen a mermaid. However, they go out and hunt for one. So it's like, what, you're just hoping you're going to catch one. You've never seen one. You're not even sure if you believe in them, but you're going out specifically to try and hunt a mermaid. Doesn't make sense to me. They're out for a week apparently, and then they snag one. I would have thought it would have been better if maybe it was caught by accident, because they could have get rid of this problem. But anyway, that's not the only problems with this one. This just very opening sequence. The captain of this ship decides what he wants to do is chop the mermaid in half, as in chop the kind of the tail off and then the sort of human torso, and then sell them separately and make $1 million. How does that, you know, how is that helpful in any way? I mean, for a start, you would assume that if you cut something in half, you're going to kill it. I mean, it doesn't, and that scene is very graphic. Well, it's not particularly graphic, but it's filmed in a way that I feel is uncomfortable. So that scene is kind of filmed well done, but it doesn't make sense narratively. The fishermen have no idea that this mermaid is going to survive if you cut it in half, and then it kind of defeats the purpose. If you've got a mermaid, all that you're left with, it could be left with, is a torso and a large fish tail. I mean, it just so happens the mermaid grows human legs, but they didn't know that was going to happen. Anyway, there's no proof that she's a mermaid. That's what happens with when she goes back to the mainland. And then we have, and then this is all going on. And there just happens to be this psychotic doctor on another boat just nearby who goes in and steals the mermaid for himself. And he's like, murders the kind of the captain of the crew, and he's like he runs like a mental asylum essentially. But he's got this mermaid to study. That's not that kind of doctor. That's that you want to study this mermaid, but you're there to treat mental illness, not, you know, biology. It's just, and that is the opening scene. And then obviously the movie is littered with things like that just don't make any sense. The ghost plot is absolutely ridiculous, because it so takes focus away from the fact that there's a mermaid in the movie. You've got this ghost plot as well. It's like, why is there a ghost here? And, you know, it's just silly. And then I'm just going to take one more scene, but the movie is just filled with these kind of nonsensical scenes. The movie kind of has this kind of girl power message to it, which I don't begrudge at all, right? You know, I think that it works for the idea of the film at least. And there's a moment towards the end of the film where there's a kind of a big moment where there's a bonding moment between the kind of the mermaid and these kind of other mental patients, these female mental patients. But that moment wasn't really earned, if you ask me, because all throughout the film, the mermaid is relatively ostracised by the remainder of the group, and all of a sudden they're kind of like, you know, best pals and kind of like having a sisterhood thing. It wasn't earned. Anyway, like I said, this movie just lurches from scene to scene. Doesn't make any sense. There's no real reason why this kind of doctor is a psychopath. We're never really told that. He just is. You know, it could go on and on, kind of like picking apart the story of this film. But that's not the only problem, unfortunately. I do feel, although there are some strong performances, this movie also has some fairly weak performances. In particular, the Doctor, who is very, very wooden, and I suspect only was cast because he's kind of like a, you know, good-looking guy and all that. But he, you know, his expression does not change through the movie. It's very, very a wooden actor. And because the story is such a mess, it ultimately becomes quite boring, because you're just not invested in the story. You don't really know what's going on. Sure, it looks pretty. On a visual style here, I would say this movie looks good, but there's nothing, well, there is stuff beneath the surface, but what there is just a complete mess. You know, so it is not an enjoyable film to watch, and you kind of feel yourself losing interest. I give this a 4 out of 10, because there is some, I'm going to completely tragic, because there is some value in some of the aesthetics, but story-wise, which to me is by far the most important thing, the narrative structure of the film is just a bit of a mess. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.